I've taken over this channel as we continue to guide you through the lands of night. A hero finds he must fight. Hell manifest.
Demon Wolf of Vegas by StoryMan-Jack. Another Lucifer's wolf tale. Lucifer's wolf approached the camp slowly, keeping his senses focused on the area around him. Las Vegas were fertile plains in the Spanish, the language most commonly used in the area, was no more than a group of squat buildings near a railroad track. The trading post was little more than a semi-permanent camp founded by the Spanish during their search for a more permanent trade route to Los Angeles. Infested with spies, scoundrels, and thieves, the little place resembled its character, and one that would arguably continue into the distant future. The town would grow, Mitchell knew, eyeing the tracks newly constructed that should connect the place with any main line as the railroads continued to lay better and more economical track to the West Coast. He knew he would not stay in the camp, not long. The saloon and inn, if one could call them such, was little more than a ramshackle shack tacked on the front of a series of tents. The tents, with floors sitting in the sand and muck, depending on your luck. Tying his black stallion to the post, he checked the water in the trough. It seemed full and relatively clean, though it was brownish in tint. He knew that it wouldn't poison the supernatural beast, so he left it and walked through the doors of the storefront. The odor hit him first, like a punch in his weathered face. A combination of old dried blood and fresher, coppery infused liquid. Vomit was there, and piss, cheap beer, unwanted sex, all melded together like a malicious chimera. It made the wolf's eyes water. Once he adjusted to the gloom and the eye-searing smell, Mitchell made his way to the long bar centered in the back of the structure. The two doorways on either side of the bar leading out into the tent city.
What can I do you for?
An old toothless man, shabby in appearance, asked flatly.
Water.
Mitchell breathed, taking in some of the people in the room.
Trail's been dusty,
he murmured. An older woman, once beautiful and possibly happy. Mitchell could tell by the laugh lines that seemed no longer to work correctly. For when she smiled at him, that smile did not touch her eyes. His attention moved past the madam to watch the dancing girls who sat smoking cigars and spitting their tobacco chew in the corner, their table next to the little stage on the left end of the room. The taint obvious in their auras. Some were so diseased and corrupt Mitchell doubted they would last the year. The girls began gathering slowly, reluctantly, in an attempt at another act, though Mitchell knew they would only go through the motions. Whatever excitement these gals had once had long ago in their childhoods, it had been beaten from their miserable adult lives. Some widows, some unwanted daughters, or women who couldn't afford a dowry. More were barren ladies, set aside for younger versions of themselves. The story was always the same in the end. People, women, the Lord's children, and the weakest among us, abused and tortured, and no one, not one person nor institution, carrying one whit. A tall glass of water, brown in hue, slid in front of Lucifer's wolf. It brought the man's attention back to the bartender. Without looking the old man in the eye, he downed the water, a rusty flavor sliding down his throat like slime.
Another,
he growled. The bartender smirked and went to dip another glass out of the old cracked barrel at the back of the bar.
No better than dishwater.
The thought from Mitchell sliding across the awareness that was almost fully Lucifer's wolves. This probably is the dishwater, he thought, finished. The wolf ignored it and kept scanning the room. He was looking for something familiar, something not unlike himself, a power of darkness, of brimstone, and rage. 4 men on the other side of the room sat at the table, opposite the stage, playing cards without much enthusiasm as they watched him instead of their forlorn, bent, and shabby cards. Dusty and disreputable, the men, their auras as dark, if not darker than the gals, were dangerous.
But that's all right,
Mitchell whispered.
so am I.
He finished the thought and let it slide across the awareness of Lucifer's wolf. This one agreed with that thought. And the rage built because of it, producing more heat. The paradox that was the combined existence of Mitchell Hart and Lucifer's wolf. The power of hell bound by the will of heaven in the fallen heart of a good man. He held the power of righteous wrath, the wrath of a true believer. And he growled and felt that thing, smelt that thing that seemed so familiar, so like himself. And he noted the brimstone on those men.
There is,
the wolf growled. On the tracks, one of the men said. El Diablo Lobo. The man you're looking for, that one, is out there, where the tracks end, and he's waiting for you.
fucking witches.
The wolf snarled, understanding the demon had been warned.
Another reason to clean their little putrid coven out. A link is a reason.
A maniacal laugh came from outside. Mitchell looked at the bartender, whose whole demeanor had changed. Either he'd come to the understanding that that lone wolf before him had come for another, or he just sensed the power of hell building within the room.
I'll have that water now.
Lucifer's wolf growled, his voice even more feral. Waiting, his eyes blazed while the old man hurried into the back and returned not a moment later with a glass bottle. He poured a crystal clear liquid into a new, tall, clean glass. The monster that was a man enjoyed this sweet, clear spring water, an expensive item out in the old dusty territories. It took more than half an hour for him to finish that refreshment.
You will have another ready for me in half an hour, the wolf snarled. I'll need it before I go back on the trail.
Mister, you ain't gonna come back. Not 15 minutes? Not ever. That out there ain't no man, and he knows you're coming. A dirty, marred little man with bent and broken cards in his hand cackled. The thing that was not almost completely bestial, that mantle, the entity of winter, of night, of hell, of the hunger and the hunt, looked at the ugly young thug and growled. There were no words, just the long, warning growl of a wild beast whose instincts were about to let it loose. The eyes of that creature burned red, glowing in the dim gaslight of the shack. The odor of brimstone, with a slight residue of poinsettia, overcame the vile odor of corruption that had seeped in the very timbers of the shack, a disease upon the land. The little man cringing and dropping his cards. They hit table face up, causing him to throw away what looked like a nut straight, losing him the $4 pot, a goodly sum. Lucifer's wolf walked out the door and past his stallion, the beast's eyes glowing red, even as Mitchell's own. It connected that beast to his very own power, a power that he held in hand to no master, having finally understood that his leash was one of deliberate manipulation and nothing more, not the hardened, steel-like chain he'd thought upon his soul. Though he'd already done more than could ever be forgiven, his soul seared in the eyes of his former lord. Mitchell walked on, holding on to the goodness he once was. The full moon glowed before him, and in it the silhouette of a tall, thin cowboy stood in the center of that view of the moon and the center of the tracks alike.
How dramatic.
Mitchell's thoughts skittered across the void that was now Lucifer's wolf and its instinct. The beast in man's form, in demon hide leather, dropped his rifle, the glowing red glyphs fading from the metal. as he stepped forward one step. He then cried what had become a sort of battle cry for Lucifer's wolf.
I'm bringing hell.
And he took another step. The reply was just as strong, if crazed.
Hell's already here, pretender.
Another step, and another. Closer, Lucifer's wolf drew into the range of his hated cousin, a demon werewolf, son of a witch and her demon lover, an abomination upon the cold earth. To think that this thing's mother had to have banished an innocent soul into hell in order for the demon to possess it. This thing, this monster, this son of the one who destroyed a soul, the one that sent a witch for him, that took Mitchell's seed into corruption. Flash! He saw his wife's mutilated and violated body. Flash! Everything red in the dark. Rage overwhelmed what little of Mitchell's mind was left and holding on to order. And the wolf's pace increased toward that devil wolf before him. First one colt, and then the other dropped into the dust as he began to run. The fire going out, those hellfire glyphs fading from the weapons as well. The shadow that was his adversary quickly came into clearer and clearer view, though the world seemed to shift. It nodded and dropped its own irons and began to run. Lucifer's wolf and Diablo Lobo running, two power beings on a collision course. What occurred next was like a dance, a deadly spectacle, both beautiful and awful in the power and darkness that shot forth from the battle, like lasers setting fire and disintegrating structures, a true power of hell. Though Diablo Lobo had the advantage of that power, a chaos in barely discernible order, it was balanced by the precision of the heaven-bound flavor of the same power Lucifer's wolf brought to bear. As the demon shifted, its dark leathers vanishing, as it became a gigantic black dire wolf, drool dripping from the long forearm-length fangs. An animal not seen since the Ice Age, diving for Mitchell's human body. However, the wolf was a hunter and a dirty fighter. A ball of pure rage and hellfire, evil bound in a tight weave of heaven's chains. He leapt over the creature, landing and spinning. Power came over Lucifer's wolf, and Mitchell's body was no more. And a wolf stood where the mortal had been. It was small compared to the old dire wolf's form, a more natural look, though a very large male timber wolf stood and growled low in his chest. That growl reverberated with vile power. Though that power was bound, it was sharp and quick. Rocks sprayed all about the two wolves as they spun and struck, the smaller diving and grabbing at the larger's hamstrings and haunches, seeking to tumble the large beast to give access to the soft underbelly. The night black dire wolf demon spun as well, though just a bit slower, its lack of speed balanced by the strength and toughness of its near impervious hide. Though on the defensive, it seemed to be waiting, watching for the perfect time, the one mistake, that thing that would allow the large demon to take the little timber wolf's throat. They spun, red fire, thick-shadowed and sickly, clashing against red fire, golden thin and bound in order, quick and strong, glowing in the night. Sparks raged and rang from the clash of claw and tooth, power of hate and rage, and unleashed chaotic against a focused, righteous anger, the anger of a widower, the desperation of an unrestrained father, of a man, a simple man, a righteous man, avenging his child. And though the family was not what he believed it was, he used the knowledge that he'd loved what he thought he had as one source of mortal strength, the last one before only God himself stood in his heart, that scarred yet unshattered thing. And then the demon wolf of Vegas saw its opening. The smaller Lucifer's wolf had feigned a spun to the right one too many times, showing his pattern, and the larger wolf was waiting for that very opportunity, ready to clamp down on the smaller beast's tender neck. And yet the opening was a trap. Even as Diablo Lobo lunged, sure he would taste his cousin's life's blood, sending Mitchell and Lucifer's wolf as well to the hell, a vengeance unfulfilled. The bound creature, the paradox that was Lucifer's wolf, shifted from beast back to man, a black, long-bladed knife etched in the fires of hell, runes growing bright with the power of both heaven and hell held aloft. It slipped through the demon wolf's near impenetrable hide like a hot iron through butter. The weapon pierced the demon's shriveled and blackened heart, bursting the entire beast into flames, devouring any trace of it from this plane of earth. Mitchell, naked and sweating, fell hard upon his naked ass. Cold sweat drenched his body, and his chest heaved in exhaustion. The slow, steady clapping came out of the darkness. "Well, my hunter, you've certainly been exploring your..." The voice paused. "Boundaries."
"Not your hunter,"
Mitchell replied, shaking his head.
Not any more.
His voice wary, and once again, purely mortal. Pardon me, the well-dressed man, a black English business suit and matching bowler hat covering his form, asked in astonishment as he entered view. You said what? Again?
I have no leash, demon. Being of lies,
Mitchell said, unconcerned, lying down upon his back and looking up into the stars, letting the lower muscles in his torso unlock and begin to relax.
Your lies will not tie me to you no more. You will not get my soul or your power back until I am done.
He has you there, my brother, another voice, an almost indistinguishable copy of the first, came from the other direction. And an identical form, only this one dressed in a white business suit and bowler, remarked and chuckled. A sly smile appeared upon Mitchell's face as he closed his eyes, the last of the tension going out of his body. I am no longer your brother, the demon spoke, wariness in his voice. How many times must I remind you? The demon's face changed into one of curiosity, and it glanced back at the human, naked and grinning, eyes closed. It hardly matters. You must continue your hunt, and I wonder, the last word of the demon's voice changing into a slightly lighter one. Wonder what? The other English voice asked, while Mitchell lay there seemingly in another realm, eyes closed and expression wistful. Well, where will our hunter go next? The demon asked.
Suffer not a witch to live,
Lucifer's wolf croaked with a growl, even as Mitchell himself smiled, lips unmoving. You know, witches are technically out of bounds, even for you. Each witch bound to a different demon. You know not what powers lie beyond their individual visage. The demon informed the wolf that was no longer his.
Then I'll take them all down to the gates of hell with me, and as many more as I can.
The wolf's growl was playful yet confident.
And then I'll find you. A tool tests its power and notes that sometimes even those manipulated into grasp of foul power can bend that power to noble purpose. In the darkness, in the night, we return you back to this channel until night comes again. Nox Vini, fear